Hello, guys, and welcome to my Week 15 reactions and thoughts video. This week was, pretty entertaining, I guess, from a football standpoint, but some of these games definitely didn't go the way I thought they would. But starting off, we have Thursday Night Football. Definitely a game that did not go the way I thought it would. It just looked like to me both offenses were not performing well. Besides that, I wouldn't say either defense played incredibly well. I think the Rams, they did have a pick on Purdy, which kind of separated the Rams from San Fran at the end of the game. But for most of this game, I did not know who was gonna win. Props to Los Angeles for winning. It makes their path to the playoffs a lot easier. And they are now, after, the Seahawks loss on Sunday night, they now hold that division, having the tiebreaker over the Seahawks, but still having to play them one more time. As for San Fran, I'm sorry, but it just isn't promising, I guess. When a guy like Purdy is going to get a contract and he's just not able to hit these throws. Like, I'm sorry, but pretty inaccurate. Not much to say about San Fran. I think that both offenses were just stale and not performing how well they could. Moving on, we have Ravens Giants. Not much to say. Lamar Jackson really dominating in this game, running for a good amount, passing for a good amount. A lot of touchdowns, obviously, 5 passing, which is usually unusual for this team, with a team with Henry and Jackson who can both run the ball in fairly easily. Obviously, Tommy DeVito, high completion percentage, but put under a lot of pressure, but then knocked out of the game. Tim Boyle comes in, does a little bit better in terms of, getting the ball downfield, but did have more pass attempts. So, not a lot to say here. Just, a should be playoff team in the Ravens beating up on one of the worst teams in the league. Moving on to Jets Jaguars. Good lord, this is a game that I didn't expect to be high scoring. Aaron Rodgers finally seems to kind of ignite, having a very good, average on his completions, but not a very high completion percentage. As we all know, Devonte Adams, having a crazy game. Props to him to show he still has it. And not much to say about the Jaguars. A ton of passing, and, not that much running, which, we've known the Jets to be susceptible to, this year. So just not very good, passing a lot. I'm not sure what their plan is. I don't know if they're looking to, maybe try to highlight Mac Jones to possibly trade him away, but who the heck knows what's going on with the Jaguars. Cowboys Panthers. The Panthers, I thought, would put up a lot bigger of a fight, as they had been putting up a fight every single week against some pretty good teams from week to week. But as it turns out, Dallas just kind of crushes them. Cooper Rush, nothing crazy. Rico Dowdle popping off, though. I'm happy for him. Hopefully, they actually run him quite a bit, and they don't look to replace him because of, a so-so season for the Cowboys, who could still finish above 500 and, potentially make the playoffs, which makes you wonder, like, what all is going on this team, with Prescott, Lamb, Parsons, and just an overall weird year by the Cowboys. And the Panthers, I'm sorry, but Bryce Young kind of didn't perform as well as you would have hoped, but he was under a lot of pressure this game. Commanders Saints. I thought the Commanders would be looking like a well-oiled machine coming off a bye, a late bye and that sort of thing. And don't get me wrong, Jaden Daniels played well, only missing 6 passes out of 31, 2 TDs. He was sacked 8 times. New Orleans defense has always been very good at kind of getting after these younger quarterbacks. I think they punish them better than any team, to be honest with you. And, and then it's like they have Spencer Rattler and then Jake Hayner has to come in. And overall, just kind of, I mean, sorry, maybe it's the other way around. Goodness, I'm sorry. But as we all know, at the end of the game, Rattler comes in and he's playing well, but as well as you could on a team like this, and they come within, a 2 point attempt of winning this game. But overall, I think the Commanders are happy they eked away with a win because that wild card spot at the bottom is looking to be like it's the only one that's going to be contested in the NFC. Moving on, we have Bengals Titans. This game looked very, very much like it could go either way because it's clear now that the Bengals can't stop anybody. Will Levis didn't play well. I mean, he had a high completion percentage, but on the 3 passes he didn't complete, they were picks. So I don't know if it was somewhat a thing where, oh, he's playing with a lot of confidence still, good to see, but then maybe too confident because the 3 balls that ended up not being completions were all picks. and you can definitely see a little bit of overcockiness. And then Mason Rudolph comes in. He's able to, dominate, the Cincinnati defense. He did throw a pick as well, but it's overall crazy to me that Cincinnati really can't rely on their defense for anything. And even Burrow had 2 picks, wildly enough, and they ran the ball quite a bit as well. Even with 37 pass attempts, Burrow, they still ran it 25 times with Chase Brown, and I like what Chase Brown is doing, and I think he definitely deserves a legitimate shot to be their running back next year, or at least give him an attempt or some competition where he starts out as the number 1. But overall, with Tennessee, really the main goal I think this offseason for them is going to be to try to make sure that Levis cuts down on these turnovers, because I think it's what's going to kill his career is if he can't limit his turnovers, his really bad turnovers. Moving on to Chiefs Browns, finally a non-nail biter. I don't think it really says anything about either team besides the Chiefs are banged up. They scored 3 times, in the first 3 quarters, a touchdown apiece. Holden Cleveland, who's just a struggling, unit and a struggling team that's been very off and on this year. And Judy's still performing, getting above 100 yards. I just think that the Browns looked very susceptible to some easy things. Like the Worthy touchdown, just to me was kind of handed to him. He didn't even really look like he turned on the Jets like the fastest 40-yard of all time or anything like that. And just overall, not a lot to say about this game. Obviously, the Kansas City being like, yeah, we can't drop a game, or we potentially, could come closer into, dropping the 1 seed, which they need the 1 seed to get healthy and to get rested after a grueling regular season with still 2 more games, or 3 more games to play. Texans Dolphins. The Dolphins, I just feel like looked off on offense. Tua didn't look like himself. This was one of those weeks, and it's probably the backbreaker of their season for their slim playoff hopes with a loss here. And obviously Houston doesn't, isn't threatened by by anyone else in their division, but you don't want to drop down to the 4 seed because you're the worst division, have the worst divisional leader record. And I thought that, the Texans would look a bit better. I think that, coming off a bye, you'd expect them to be better, but this passing game, complete abysmal. And same with the running game. Just, Ogunbowale had, one run. Otherwise, you're looking at a very bottom dweller average in this game, and even Tank Dell had a 15-yard carry. But it's like Joe Mixon not able to get it going against Miami. who hasn't been the best at tackling this year and letting runners go loose. And I just fear for Houston. Their defense, I think, is good enough with a very good pass rush and talented players, at DBs, but overall their offense is just stuttering way too much for me to like their chances in the playoffs. Moving on to Broncos Colts, this game looked crazy close up until there was a pick, from the Indianapolis. I was trying to get it back to Richardson on a trick play and return for a touchdown. And then after that, it was all said and done because obviously Denver was losing going into the fourth quarter, and then they scored 21 and just pretty much come alive. And I think that this game kind of, let Washington's Jaden Daniels come back into the rookie of the year mix because Bo Nix didn't have that great of a game. He had 3 TDs, but he also had 3 picks against an Indianapolis defense that isn't anything too special, but props to Denver for winning this, and they play a huge game on Thursday night here. Cardinals Patriots. As we all know, the Cardinals really throwing away a game they could have competed in against the Seahawks a week prior because of Kyler Murray's bad picks. And this game, James Conner really just kind of came alive, and they always seem to be a team that is right when James Conner is able to run well. Just because I don't think they have a passing attack yet that can be as dominant as they would like to be. Not that Kyler's bad at throwing the ball, but you do have a good weapon in Harrison, and he's only going to continue to get better and get in rhythm with Kyler Murray the more they play. But and McBride to me, has been really, really, really good even this year. But you just need another kind of guy that's going to be maybe your short yardage dude, to really make this passing attack lethal next year. And and James Conner's really your only running back to me that can carry the load on this team. But Drake May looking very, very accurate. Did have a pick, sacked a couple times. But I mean, I personally think, you like what you've seen at this point from Drake May, that he can be very accurate, he can be athletic, and this is a team that's only going to continue to grow, with a healthy Drake May at the helm. Moving on to one of the biggest game of the weekend, I would say, is Bills Lions. The Bills really not stepping off the pedal at all. And I think that they realized that this is a Lions team, that it doesn't matter if you're up 2 scores, 3 scores, or whatever else. They can have crazy quarters where they put up 21, which is what they did at the end of this game. The only reason really Buffalo was able to stop this team is that they had, is that Detroit, they forced a number of 3-and-outs on them where Campbell wasn't comfortable going for it. But I will say that Campbell going for an onside early in the fourth was kind of asinine. I feel like if you don't give Buffalo a short field there, and you make them drive the field potentially and limit their points, that this could have been a different game, but I think this game really has shown that against a team with as many weapons and a QB that performs, at a very high level, obviously Josh Allen, in my opinion, really cemented that he is the MVP favorite after this game. But I think that it really shows that Detroit is really, really banged up, and it's going to be hard, with games left to play and the potential to lose the division when they were the hottest team in the league for a while, that it's going to be a tough end of the season for them with 3 games remaining. And Buffalo, to me, really showed that they are the best team in the league after this game. They're pretty healthy. They've got Josh Allen playing the best he's ever played. And then they have a good run game too with James Cook and Ray Davis and then even Ty Johnson. So it's just overall, a very well-rounded Bills team that is going to be the team to beat in the playoffs. Moving on to Buccaneers Chargers. Boy, did I not think this game was going to be as crazy as it was. Mike Evans with a crazy game, a career kind of game for him. And then Baker just throwing lights out. This reminds me of how well they were playing early in the year. This is a Tampa Bay team that is getting hot at the right time. They control their destiny within their division. And Bucky Irving is a baller. One of my favorite running backs to emerge this year. And it's like, then you have Rachaad White. Couldn't go any better after the Buccaneers had an abysmal running game for years and years and years prior to this. Going back to when they had Brady, where, Brady had to throw for like 4,400 or a crazy amount of yards or whatever it was. And they just didn't have a run game. And it is hard to win in the postseason without a run game. And overall, I just think Herbert under a lot of pressure, not able to play as comfortably as he wants, throwing for a meager amount of yards. I just think that, Los Angeles has been very inconsistent on offense. They have good pieces, but I think overall they're really going to need to give Herbert, more weapons. Not that they don't have any, in order to make this team more competitive with these teams that have a lot of offensive firepower and can outscore them if they can't hold them down. But props to Tampa Bay. I really didn't think that they were just going to come in and be like, yeah, we're dominating this game. And the Chargers, I'm hopeful you can make the playoffs, because I think you're still worthy of a playoff spot, barring a few games that, got away from you. Moving on to Eagles Steelers. This game to me really showed what I've been saying about Pittsburgh and Russell Wilson since he's come in, that he isn't very good. And I'm so sick of people saying that, yeah, Russell Wilson resurrected his career. They had beaten some bottom dweller teams. They had beaten teams that had apparent, struggles and issues, and just overall, I don't mind that Russ can throw these moon balls, as they call them, and that, a guy like Pickens or a tall guy like Williams can just have an advantage for it in these 50-50 balls, but they went up against Philadelphia, who runs a really good scheme, and Russell Wilson got exposed, dumping the ball off a lot, not doing a lot, and to me, I think Philadelphia really corrected their run game issue. They really didn't I thought Najee Harris was going to be one of the deciding factors in this game, which he probably was. Not that they ran it a lot. They didn't run it a lot on, Pittsburgh. And I kind of blame, I don't know, your head coach, for, abandoning it that easily. You think that Pittsburgh's going to be able to do some things, and then, because they have talent and they have, an offense that has enough weapons with, and that sort of thing. And I guess, they didn't have Pickens this game. I'll say that, which is huge, but you still have other weapons that have been able to produce this year. And I just think that this was a lot more telling about Pittsburgh than it was about Philadelphia. Philadelphia not able to run it as well as, you would like. Obviously, Saquon with 65 rushing yards. He had a 20, and one of those was a 22-yard run. So you take that away, and this is a guy with under 50 rushing yards on 18 carries, you guys. So it's just, and Jalen Hurts completing at a high percentage. Let's see and hope that stays the way it is, because that was my complaint. And that was everyone's complaint about why Philadelphia, has had to rely on the run so much, is that, hey, their passing game is terrible for the weapons they have. But they went up against a Pittsburgh team that, They lost TJ Watt late. I hope he's healthy, but they were still able to go pretty much the whole game with him and play well against him. And overall, I'm still waiting to see more consistency from Philadelphia. I don't think Pittsburgh was as good as everyone wants to proclaim. They finally go up against a team that is, don't get me wrong, the Philadelphia is top of the league, but it's like there is a lot of issues with a lot of the teams, still in the league that are the top of the league. I mean, you look at the Lions, injuries are one. You look at Philadelphia's passing game up until this, game, pretty bad. You look at, even my Packers' inconsistency on defense. You look at the Chiefs, oh, they squeak by every single game, just about, and then you look at the Vikings, and they've just, there's just been some times that they've turned the ball over, and Darnold has had interceptions that are bad, and their defense hasn't always looked, extra, as dominant as they are every single game. But there's just issues with all of these top teams this year, and whoever to me is able to quell issues, going into the postseason is gonna be the toughest team, you know. But moving on to Sunday Night Football, we have my Packers visiting Seattle. I'm not gonna lie, I always get nervous going into Seattle. The fail Mary, playing Seattle and having that onside kick as well. I think that was at Lambeau, but Seattle just gives me the anxiety, and overall we were able to get to Geno quite a lot, knocked him out of the game. They said it was a knee injury, and then Sam Howell comes in and we're able to just smother him as well. And he just, I mean, I feel bad for him having to go behind like a shoddy offensive line that, met the Packers pass rush on a good game. And then obviously, Josh Jacobs not even getting 100 yards. I think that, Seattle did make it a point to try and stop him in the second half, and that sort of thing, and really kind of stop him. But that first drive the Packers had, it was all Jacobs. And I mean, Jordan had to throw it to him on like a screenplay, was the only action he got. But they were like, hey, we're getting you this touchdown. We're showing it that we can run down your throat, setting the tone for this game. And then Jordan Love, a lot of beautiful passes. The Watson catch on the sideline, beautiful throw, beautiful catch. The Dobbs touchdown at the end of the game to ultimately seal and ice this game, when, my Packers in the second half were otherwise dormant with only a field goal from McManus. But overall, another thing is Edgerrin Cooper playing a hell of a game, coming back from his hammy injury. And really, and it's one of the things that I was saying is I was like, Edgerrin Cooper was really, really helping us over the middle, you know, when he was playing before his hamstring injury, and then missing time, but coming back and clearly being fully healthy and doing a lot of things. I'm just glad that he's back because he is, a young playmaker that can do so much. And I think it's only scratching the surface at this point. But overall, a dominant win by my Packers. Thank God I didn't have to hold my breath at all. And just overall, I think Seattle didn't really expect this kind of game from my Packers. Charbonnet ran it pretty well on his limited carries. But overall, just I think the inconsistencies came back where DK Metcalf did not do that much. Jackson Smith-Njigba did good things. He's very elusive and hard to cover 100% of the time. And just overall, a game where they did not do well in the red zone, able to push the field and do good things, when Geno Smith was passing the ball, but overall just bad red zone. The pick from Valentine and just overall a performance where it's like all phases did well on the Packers for a dominant win in Seattle, who had won 4 straight, and was a hot team coming into this week. Moving on to Monday night, we have Vikings Bears. Not much to say here. I think this was definitely better than last week's game. Being the last week's obviously the game prior to this, the Bears, first game without Eberflus, but it went absolutely abysmal, and you go up against Minnesota, who you pulled into overtime the last time you played them, and it just seems to me like there's a lack of effort. There is a lack of effort on the Bears. As far as I'm concerned, they had Kyler Gordon, I'm pretty sure, was like the only player playing with any flair on that team, really trying to hustle, really trying to play. And this is the time that you really see these players where, like, their true nature, like, oh, you don't have anything to play for, the playoffs are out of reach, but you're just being sandbags on the field. And, it's not like Minnesota ran away with it like they did the week prior, where the Cardinals were just where was it was it the Cardinals? I guess I can't even remember. But the Vikings had essentially some passes that were just free touchdowns last week, and they didn't really have that this week. But it just looked like every single third down, oh, the Bears are just playing this soft coverage with very bad mentality. But just overall, a game that really I do feel sorry a little bit for Caleb Williams, but I think he is still holding onto the ball too long. He needs to get rid of it, or he needs to make the decision to like run and get away and throw the ball away, because he's taking a lot of unnecessary hits because of his lack of urgency. And people say that the line is mad, but the line held up pretty good sometimes, and he just held the ball on for too long. And it's like, I think, if depending on what coach they get next year, whether it's the Lions OC, yeah, I think that's the best possible outcome, because he can definitely make it a lot easier on Caleb, and bring in his, dominant offense of the Lions, But it's like they're gonna need a coach that is gonna be able to know how to get Caleb Williams going, because I do think he's got the arm strength, the athleticism, and the talent, but mentally, it just looks like it's rough for him out there on making decisions. But moving on, we have Falcons Raiders. This was a lot more exciting of a game, I guess, in terms of like, oh, it was never decided until, the clock hit zero. But Kirk Cousins not playing well. Desmond Ritter, I think, actually played pretty well, I guess. Only had, the one pick he had that wasn't, on the final play of the game, was kind of like, oh, yeah, why did he do that? Kind of gives you flashbacks to when he was on the Falcons. But it's like he kept them in the game and he played very well. And that was without a running game, really. He was the running attack that they had. But overall, I think, you're happy with a win with the Falcons. But overall, you're just like, did we move forward at all? And it's like, our defense, a guy like Ritter who hadn't started all year, came in last week, obviously, and he's able to play, well enough to keep you in a close game. It just worries me if you're a Falcons fan. I don't really have much more to say about this game. It just doesn't give me confidence. But, that's all that that's what I'm thinking about, this week's games. Tell me what you guys think in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoy my content and enjoyed this video. But as always, this is CastCast, and I'm your host, Casty Streeter. And go Pack Go.